Okay, I guess we are online already. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our next session of Eurasia Talk seminars. Today we have a great guest and great speaker, and to present our speaker and to present our topic today, I would like to ask Işık Kuşçu-Bonaparte, our co-host, so please, Işık Hoca, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I mean, since we started these Eurasia Talks seminars, I guess a couple of months ago, we have been increasing interest in our program seminar series, and that's really exciting as we have participants or the guests until the end of June already, and we have demands, or we're actually thinking about inviting all other people as well, and that's really exciting because the region is important and all the countries indeed are important. And today we are honored to host Associate Professor Emre Gürbüz, who is also an old friend of mine, and but not that old. We're not that old, and and he's also a METU graduate, history and sociology background, and currently he's teaching and living in Bishkek, which is also one of my favorite places in the region. So, and I think he's going to talk about a lot of issues that are important in terms of, the political stability, as national identity is key to a lot of things. And these countries are having relatively not so easy process of transition in terms of national identity construction due to their different ethnic makeups, etc. So I think Emre will be focusing on how national history is interpreted by the authorities, by various other sides in these countries, and we're excited to what he's going to say, and welcome to all. Thanks for your interest. Emre, please.
Okay, thank you, Işık, for this nice introduction. And well, you give some information about my personal history. I won't tell in detail about my personal history, my past. Later, if you're gonna have some questions, I can clarify how I started the studies, I mean, nation formation and historiography, history writing, how I started, why I started, how I studied this issue. It was actually, very briefly, I can say that it was like a hobby for me. I started nearly 20 years ago, and all through those years when I was making, well, it was even before I started with masters. So all through those years when I was writing my master's, PhD thesis, and then writing articles on different topics, I was collecting books about history education, I mean history textbooks from Turkic countries I visited, and also from other countries, from Europe, Russia, etc. In all the countries I visited, I either bought history textbooks or history atlases in order to understand those different perceptions of history, the different constructions of the past. So here I'm going to talk about only 3 Turkic countries, but if there will be questions or comments, we can also discuss history education in other countries as well. I looked at history education in nearly all of Turkic countries and some European countries like Germany, Britain, or others like India, US, Australia, some African countries, etc. What is interesting for me in all these history books, history is based on facts. we deal with facts, history, but historians select and construct a history by using the facts we have from the past. So it is accepted that every generation writes its own history. Of course, not only generations, also different schools, approaches are constructing different histories. I do not argue that history is nothing more than a fiction. There's such a postmodern claim. I don't accept that. It is history, is still based on facts, and we as historians still have to try to write objectively as much as possible, although it is not possible 100%, of course, which is not possible for other fields of social sciences as well. But history education, this is another field. If we are talking about history education, it is more determined by contemporary needs, expectations of the state policies, define how history education should be, at least whether it should be more research-oriented or whether it should be more information-based. In some countries like Germany and Great Britain, for example, history education is more research-oriented or problem-based. It tries to present different viewpoints to students, tries to teach them how to conduct their own study and how to make research, etc. For example, I can show you, where is it? A history textbook here from Germany, that one. So this is a book when I bought in Germany. This is a very nice history textbook indeed. It first starts with competencies or skills which a student has to learn. And then, well, here it starts with some basic information and then competency building. And then we came to an aimed goal. And there's a chronology, of course, brief presentation of the issue of the theme. What is important here that it has questions. Here you see, I think Q2, Q3, etc. Those are questions. Those questions are asked to students, and they also give some material, first-hand material, we say. So through those first-hand materials, the students discuss those different issues. And there are also some sections with D is written here, if you can see it here. D, what is it? D2. D is for discussion, just like in English. So there are also different discussion points. So after getting the basic information about a certain issue, certain theme, the students discuss from different viewpoints a certain issue. The idea in that is, well, this is related with the state policy, of course, and the German state, or also in Great Britain. The main aim is presenting students for a democratic society. What is a democratic society? From international relations, we know, for example, about politics, democracy, or diplomacy. There are 3 C's we talk about, which is conflict, compromise, and consensus. So also in reading a history textbook, the students learn that there are conflicting ideas, different ideas that they have to discuss. And while discussing, they need to make compromises. And at the end, they need to come to a consensus or not. This is the basic of democracy. And through learning history, the students actually learn how to conduct discussions and how to reach a consensus. So therefore, even if we can say this in Germany or in Great Britain, they make a history which is objective, still this style, how it will be given, is related with the priorities of the state. Most countries, on the other hand, follow a more information-based education. Many countries actually started to revise their history education in order to shape it to a more competency-based education. But if I look, or if we look at those history textbooks, we do not see those different viewpoints. We do not see discussion points, etc. So there is again one certain point presented by the education, through the education, and the student is expected to learn it, and even to learn it hard, to recognize it. So the history education is a field where we can see the state ideology, because there is a need, especially if we are talking for young nation states. The state needs to give a certain ideology to the new generation. They need to raise a new generation with shared ideas, with shared norms and values, and also with shared reflexes. So it is therefore a significant field or a significant instrument for the state to teach the young generations or citizens, let's say. The students, of course, they forget most of the information they learn at history classes, but still, some reflexes are given to them. At least they know who we are and who the others are, who are our enemies, what is the threat against us. So at least the students get some idea through this. So what I was trying to do when I was looking at those history textbooks is to understand the idea or ideology of the state behind the textbook. So that is basically what I am trying to do. And now I'm gonna skip to a PowerPoint presentation. Yes, you see it, I think. Okay, so then we can start. Yes, so that was the topic of my presentation: construct a national identity through history education in Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. So, well, the structure of it, there will be an introduction first, and then I will talk some about the general characteristics of the Azerbaijani historiography, and then change to Kazakhstan. But before going to Kazakhstan, I will make a comparison. And then after Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and again a comparison in between. And then very briefly concluding remarks. So that's the basic structure of my presentation. So as I said, history is based on facts, but those facts are selected and interpreted. This is necessary. I mean, if you are not only for history education, in every field of history, we have to make a selection. If it is a problem-based study, for example, we have to make a selection from all those data which are just lying there. And we always have different ideas, different perspectives, different expectations. And therefore, our historiography, writing of history, is also changing. And if we are talking about history education, in addition to that, there is an issue related with the national consciousness, which is related with the goal of the state, a national consciousness for the new generation. And the state, through history education, tries to give a certain idea about the past related with the nation. That is what I have written here about Dasein and others. This is actually related with the 19th century Romanticism. And that was also the age of nations and nationalisms, of course. Then, in order to present the meaning, the reason of being, Dasein in German, in the long march of history, the national consciousness, the essence of the nation was sought to be presented to the students. In some countries, this is still being done, especially in young countries, young nation states. This is a necessity, this is a requirement actually. It is not realistic to say this is not objective, this is ideological, so skip that. Saying that is not actually realistic, I might accept. So if their knowledge about the glorious days of the past will be revived, then those glorious days will also be revived. So that was sort of 19th century romanticist idea, but it still has some representation in other countries. So facts are selected and positioned in a chain of events to produce a meaningful and reliable story of the past to be proud of, which is the source, the basis of national consciousness. So history education is one of the most critical instruments, let's say. It gives some idea about our present identity, our honorable place as a nation in the world, and it helps the state to interpret the past for the future and shape new generations with certain values, reflexes, and goals, etc. Although they are being forgotten, as I was saying, they are being reproduced, revived every day through everyday nationalism or banal nationalism, symbols, rituals, or news on newspapers, through media, better to say. News, especially news about the world affairs, revive those reflexes about who we are and who our enemies are. So the history education is forgotten, but the basic idea keep living. They are stronger than the information itself. So there are some questions for this, I selected for this presentation, some research questions, we can say. So the chronology, if we are talking about the long march in history, so what is the chronology in those history textbooks, how it is being constructed? And second important question is the territoriality and ethnicity, their effect on historiography. I will clarify that a little bit. And then a third question is about the ethnogenesis, which states, tribes are accepted as ancestors, ethnogenesis. So those are three basic questions. There are many other questions as well, which I can talk about when it comes. So sources, well, let's show this one. My sources are those history textbooks, of course. I have collected many history textbooks. Recently, thanks to internet, I can download some of them and use as PDF. Well, also here on my table, I got some books. Maybe later I can show some of them to you. Anyway, there are two sets of history textbooks in those countries. One of them is about the fatherland. The other one is about the world. Here you see two sets from Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan. Uzbekistan tarihi, if you know Turkish, you can understand it, okay? Johan tarihi, Cihan tarihi, world history. It means, and then we have Azerbaijan tarihi and umumi tarih, meaning general history. So those are the two sets, world history and fatherland history. What I chose to study is the textbook of fatherland history, Azerbaijan tarihi and Uzbekistan tarihi. So here are some hypotheses. In forming a national identity, each republic continued to distance itself from their Turkic neighbors. Differences in ethnogenesis and historical legacies states. This is in a way important. This is actually my main question when I started studying those Turkic countries 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, actually. I was actually interested in Middle Eastern history and Arabic countries, and I also visited Tunisia at that period, and I saw that their historiography is different, that from the outside we see that we think that they are all Arabs, so what's the difference? But if you go to an Arabic country, or if you read books written about them, you see Bernard Shaw, for example, you see that they all have their own legacies. For Tunisia, it is Carthage and then Kayrevan, Alevi dynasty, dynasties which have been founded in Tunisia. For Iraq, it is Iraq. For, I don't know, Syria, it is Syrian history. They all differentiate themselves from their neighbors. And it is similar for the Turkic countries. In Central Asia, except Tajikistan, all are Turkic or Turkic-speaking countries. And in order to create a nation state, you have to differentiate yourself from your neighbor. Therefore, this differentiation, the differences, became a significant issue for historiography, let's say. And there is a territorial coverage of history, but it is growing since the independence. Territorial historiography is becoming more national, ethnic. Each republic emphasizes perenniality of its state tradition, culture, civilization, and nation. So I will try to talk about all of them. So, I can summarize this part. After the dissolution of the USSR, we all know that new independent states had emerged, and they all needed a new source of shared values, a new ideology, national identity, which would consolidate the sovereignty. And history education was a beneficial tool in that. They took from the previous period, from the Soviet period, the territoriality of history. And there is some continuities and changes with the Soviet historiography. The main continuity is related with territoriality. The main change is about the nation or ethnic history. So basically, we accept that there are two sorts of historiography, one being territorial, the other ethnic history. What is territorial history? Territorial history is the most common history telling, actually, in countries. So all peoples, tribes, dynasties in a certain region are accepted as part of the history of this country, part of the legacy. It has started in Britain and then in France, and today it's accepted by most states. So if you are talking about the history of Britain, for example, and it starts with prehistorical times, of course, and then the Roman period, and then, I don't know, Anglo-Saxons, and then the Norman invasions, 1066, etc. And all those nomadic people, or all those people who migrated to Great Britain, are part of the history. And also for France, the name of France, definitely it comes from a Germanic tribe, the Franks. But in France, they are not talking about the migration, the great migration of the Franks from the Germanic lands, from Frankfurt am Oder, Frankfurt am Main, into France, and how they conquered it gloriously, and they established their own country there. No, this is not the story. They start with the old ages, and then the Gauls, the Celts, and then the Roman period, and then the Franks came. They are being, in a way, assimilated. They do not say it, I say it. So this is the basic idea, actually, in most countries. So also in Spain, for example, you have this territorial historiography. Today, in the US or in some states of United Nations, it is being enlarged to include more of that regional history, of course, especially for European Union, and more information about the world, not the Eurocentric world, but the world. So, and then, yes, during the Soviet period, that was a territorial history, and it was also related with the nation, the idea about the nation of Stalin. We all know this famous, well-referred sentence of Stalin, I guess. What is a nation? It is a historically constituted, stable community of people formed on the basis of common language, territory, economic life, and psychological make-up manifested in a common culture. So Stalin takes the culture as the manifestation. So it is not the ethnicity, it is the culture. And this culture is bound with the territory and also economic life, of course. If from the point of historical materialism or Marxism, culture is just a superstructure, of course. You have to emphasize the substructure, which is economy. Here also territory is significant. How Stalin developed this idea, his arguments against the Austrian nationalism is a huge issue. I do not enter to this field, but what we can say that for Stalin, nation is related with culture, and it was very much related with the territory. The culture created in that territory. And after the dissolution of the USSR, that territoriality continued. While there are some general reasons for this continuity, the general reason is about you can see it in those maps actually. All those republics were, the borders, national borders of those republics were drawn in 1924, 36. So before that, we had different khanates or different divisions, governorates, etc. But those borders we have today are not historical facts indeed. But this is a general issue for all of them. But now they have those borders, and territoriality helps those countries to consolidate, realize, make real those borders, those contemporary borders. There are also unique, particular reasons for each country why territoriality is important. I can talk about them later. Ethnic history, I will not give much information about that. It is very basic. You see it on the map here. This is Indo-Germanische Landnahme is written here. I found this is from the Nazi period. Say it. So, and I had the opportunity to be accepted to work at an archive in Germany, in Braunschweig. It is specialized on textbook research, and they have history textbooks from more than 175 countries, and very huge archive about the German history, of course. They also have those history textbooks of the Nazi period, and they permitted me to make copies of them because I cannot be a neo-Nazi or whatsoever. So that was about ethnic history, and that was from that Nazi period. The Germans, Indo-Germanic land taking, it means. It shows as the Urheimat, the original land, the North Germany, sorry. And then they spread from that part to the other parts of the world, etc. This is an ethnic history. It deals with the migration of a nation or an ethnic group from one part, an Urheimat, original land, to the actual land. And the history before their arrival has no significance in that historiography. Okay, I leave that apart. So start with Azerbaijan. What are the general characteristics of Azerbaijani historiography? It is both territorial and ethnic history. So that it is territorial, it covers the area of Azerbaijan and yes, okay, it covers the area of Azerbaijan, and also it is about the history of the Turks in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is claimed to be a perennial land of Turks, and the territory is also a large territory. It includes Iranian Azerbaijan as well. So it is a big territory, and it is a territory of Turks. That's it. All states of North and South Azerbaijan are states of Turks. They are ruled by Turks, or the main population were Turks. Both are taught in equal number of pages in the history textbooks of Azerbaijan. So South Azerbaijan, I mean Iranian Azerbaijan, is also significant. I should also say that this is not a new issue. That is not very different from the Soviet period. They did not add it after the independence. What they added is about the ethnic history, nationalization of territory. So this is Azerbaijan in ancient times, for example. You see the territoriality, and also you see that the problem with Nagorno-Karabakh, for example, was a significant issue, of course, until the recent war. And here that region presented is in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, and it also shows that is historical land of Azerbaijan. And then Albania. Albania is the name of a state, not Albania in the Balkans. It is all that territory is the land of Albania, who were Turkic. So this is about the chronology. It starts with Azerbaijan as a perennial land of Turks, and starts with all those states, Mana, Atropena, Albania, until independent Azerbaijan, Karakoyunlu, Akkoyunlu states, Safevid state, etc. So this is all about Azerbaijan we have today. So we see no migration of Turks or Oghuz or Turkoman, whatever we call them, from a certain country in Asia or Central Asia to Azerbaijan. All about, we are talking, is about the territory of Azerbaijan. So this is what we mean about territoriality. But it also takes deep ethnic roots. That region, here are some passages from Azerbaijani history textbooks. Artsakh in Karabakh region has been the people, I cannot see it all now. And can I move that? Yes, okay. Yes, now I can see it better. So even at the time of Albania, it was the land of people who were of Turkic origin. The name also Turkic, and the people were also Turkic at that period. They were Turkic Albans, Karkars, Huns, and Hazars who were living at that period in Azerbaijan. So it is an old land of Azerbaijanis. And Azerbaijan is the land where those Azerbaijanis are living. Therefore, also the southern part of Azerbaijan, part of Azerbaijani historiography. There are some Azerbaijani passages here. I will not read it or translate it all, but by the way, I should add that there are references to historical sources. So they are not just making up stories about them. So there are some references about old, ancient Turkic names in Azerbaijan written by different historians or in different historical sources. This one is from Reshideddin, for example, a historical source from Middle Ages. He claims, he wrote that Azerbaijan is a Turkic word, which means Hündün. Hündün means in Azerbaijan, high place. Azer is high place in Turkic, Reshideddin claims. Baykan is great or big. So Azerbaijan is a Turkic name. And then the Sacs, they are also, or the Scythians, they are also claimed to be of Turkic origin. And then the Albans, the most people living in that territory during the time of Albania were Turkic speaking. So there were other people as well, but the common language was Turkic. So that was another idea. So that territoriality is combined with nationalism in that way. It is an old land, it is our land, and it is also land of Turks, perennial Turkness of Azerbaijan. So this is about ethnogenesis. It is said that in early Middle Ages, most of the ethnic groups living in Azerbaijan were of Turkic origin, created by two big migrations of Turks. Why in early Middle Ages? This is before the coming of the Selçukids or Turkomans or the Oghuz. So Azerbaijan was not Turkified before the coming of the Selçukids. It was already Turkic at that period because of two migrations, okay? The Cimmerians, Scythians, and Sacs, that was the first migration. They were Turkic. And then the second migration, Kengerli, Pechenek, Bulgar, Onokur, Sabir, Hun, Herlat, and Oghuz, they were also Turks. So the coming of the Selçukids to that region only consolidated already existing process of ethnogenesis, okay? And territoriality is also combined with patriotism. That patriotism is related with the Soviet period, but it is still important, of course. The fight against the invaders consolidated the national consciousness, the national identity. So who were the invaders? The Sassanids, for example, and the Arabs. Arabs, that means the caliphate. When the caliphate came to this region, bringing Islam, introducing Islam to Azerbaijan, the people resisted against the Arabs, and that resistance consolidated the ethnic construction. And Babek, this is also from the Soviet period, and Babek is a national hero who resisted the Arabic invaders. He is still being celebrated as a national resistance fighter, a popular hero. And then about the unity of North and South, here you see Albania and Atropena. One is in North Azerbaijan or Republic of Azerbaijan. The other one is in Iranian Azerbaijan, but we see them both in Azerbaijani textbooks. Also during the Soviet time, that was the same. And another example from another version from 2001. This is from the new version. This is from the version of 20 years ago, the same again. And this is from an atlas about the Sassanid aggression. Again, Azerbaijan Devleti is written in the south, Azerbaijan state, and then Şirvanşah state. So I will not, this is Karakoyunlu and Akkoyunlu state, again, north and south all together. Those Karakoyunlu and Akkoyunlu states, you might know them from history in Turkey. They are accepted as states of Azerbaijan. And then Shah Ismail. You also know it if you know some Turkish history. You know it from Turkish history as well. Shah Ismail is an interesting case. Actually, it is also interesting for me to understand the emphasis on the Turkicness for Azerbaijan, because you can evaluate Shah Ismail, someone like Emir Timur, for example. Shah Ismail was a very strong and very significant figure. Here you see the land he had conquered. He was a very good commander, leader of the army. But he is not accepted as a national hero, not like Timur, far away from Timur. On the contrary, he is blamed for the wars with the Ottomans. He was a great ruler, a great poet. He was written in Turkish, and you can also read about his poems in Azerbaijani literature, literature textbooks as well. Hatayi is his pen name. He's a founder of a large empire with the capital of Tabriz, and he's a milestone for the Shiification of Iran. So the present sect, the Shiite identity of Azerbaijan actually was established, let's say, through Shah Ismail. But so he should be very significant for an identity construction, but he is not. Why? Because this is from an excerpt from the book again, because he used, first of all, Shiification, but that was just a tool. And then he divided the Turkic world and also Islamic world. And the Western diplomacy benefited from that. And because of that, the West established its hegemony in the East. That is the colonization of the East. So this is an interesting argument for me, and it shows the nationalism, the strength of nationalism. And then some other examples, of course, about the North Azerbaijan, South Azerbaijan, Russian occupation. It is occupation, by the way. It is so negative. It is very negative, that occupation and the popular struggle for freedom against Russia. All of them, as you see, are in North and South. And then again, North and South, etc. Here, what is important is also, this is about the first one about the Russian Empire, the last period of the Russian Empire and North Azerbaijan. And then we have Azerbaijan People's Republic, which was an independent republic. And then the attack on Azerbaijan by the Soviets. And the fourth map is Azerbaijan SSSR. What is important is about the establishment of Armenia. You don't see Armenia here. It's okay. Here it is a small part, let's say, around Erivan. And that corridor we see on the last map is not seen here on the first map about the Armenian Republic. So this land, this corridor is not a historical land of Armenia, but historically until 2020-22, it was part of Azerbaijan. This is stated, argued through those maps. Okay, then I continue with Kazakhstan. So similar to Azerbaijan, it also embraces territoriality, also surpasses national borders, but no claim of perenniality of Turkicness or Kazakh'ness, and extraterritoriality is not strong. It is very territorial, still strongly territorial. It embraces the legacy of all states founded in contemporary Kazakhstan. So all peoples and achievements in Kazakhstan from prehistory onwards, including Golden Man, Altın Adam or Tomiris are accepted as part of Kazakhstan's national legacy. And they do not claim that they were Turkic. No, they were Indo-European. That's okay, no problem with that. Because, well, if they are somehow related with them. Those Indo-Europeans, the Sacs, Scythians, whatever, they were also their ancestors. There's no problem with that. And if there are some achievements, the states, ancient artifacts, for example, were being found through archaeological excavations, are accepted as part of their culture, as part of their historical legacy. And they prove that Kazakhstan has an old civilization. It has old cities and states. It has old states. Even before the Russians, even the Russians had their cities. Moscow, for example, is not an old city, but we in Kazakhstan have old cities. This is not written in history textbook, of course, but when you talk, they say that, and this is not wrong. So you just select. And yes, so there's a long line of territorial continuity, therefore. But still, Kazakh Khanate, the establishment of Kazakh Khanate became a turning point in recent years. In 2015, the 550th anniversary of the Kazakh statehood was celebrated. So we, the Kazakhs, had also founded our own state long before the Russians gave it to us. This proves it. And also they talk about law, for example. In the 15th century, the Kazakhs had also a law. So law is nothing new for us. We had a state, and that state had also a law long before the Russians. And that is the territoriality. So ancient ages, this is from history textbooks again. Well, you see the recent contemporary national borders of Kazakhstan reflected to the past, projected to the past, and then Sacs, Huns, etc., all those historical periods. And also in history atlases, you see it for more recent periods. And this is from the main square in Almaty. This is also a territorial history in continuity. I just skipped that. The problem is of course related with the territorial problem of Kazakhstan. They need a territorial integrity. In 1991, Kazakhs were less than 50% of the country, and northern part was mostly Russian. But historically, they need to prove that it is not a new territory. It was a Kazakh territory before. This is not very wrong, by the way. It has some truth, I say. So, but the problem with that territoriality, I think, made this territorial understanding of historiography a very strong characteristic for Kazakhstan. This is the chronology. Again, this is all related with Khanate states established in today's Kazakhstan. And then, yes, again, all peoples are accepted as part of the history of Kazakhstan, but Kazakh Khanate is very important because ethnopolitical stability was only achieved at the time of the Kazakh Khanate. So the Kazakh state gets the emphasis. Now I am moving to Uzbekistan. Before moving to that, I will make a comparison because it is interesting that the Kazakhs historically and the Uzbeks are the branches of the same Kipchak tree. Wow, this is an argument, and it is also, there's one migration that in the 15th century, the Uzbeks migrated to Central Asia, and during that migration, well, we have it here actually. This is from 1541-45, a book written by Mirza Muhammad Haydar Dulat, Tarihi Reshidi, and here he clearly defines how the Uzbeks and the Kazakhs had emerged. So they were actually one people, the Uzbek people. Then they divided. Abul Hayr wanted to move to Transoxiana, to today's Uzbekistan, but two Khans, Cingizid Khans, did not follow him, Keray Khan and Canibek Khan. They left him. They became Kazakh Uzbeks, and people joined them. Some tribes joined them who probably didn't want to settle down. So that people around Keray and Canibek Khan grew and grew, and they became, in the 16th century, the Kazakh people. So for the Kazakhs, this migration story is a significant part also of their historiography. This one is, for example, from the website of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Okay, you see, this is about the migration. It talks about migration and then how the Kazakhs spread to the north, etc. So this is one side of argument. This is from Kazakh history textbook. And it also tells the same story. And it also say that Kazakhs and Uzbeks are blood brothers, and the origins of these two peoples are the same. Okay? What is different is the position of Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan does not accept this notion. And the Kazakh ethnogenesis, well, this is about Kazakh ethnogenesis and formation of Kazakh Khanate, etc. But it has nothing to do with our ethnogenesis, the Uzbeks say. Why? Well, first, some general characteristics, because they consider the synthesis of Persian and Turkic cultures before the coming of the Uzbeks as an ideal synthesis. And they also claim that the ethnogenesis of the Uzbeks was already established before the coming of the nomadic Uzbeks. Okay? So this is again about the chronology. I skipped that. It is briefly about the states established in today's Uzbekistan. So the Uzbek ethnogenesis is a mixture of Turkic and Iranian peoples. The critical point in ethnogenesis, the one critical event was the establishment of Khanate and of Turks, and then the migration of Turks during the Köktürk Khaganate. After that, it became the land of Turkestan. So the Persian people and the Turkic people united in that territory. There were some Iranian rulers, and there were also the Caliphate, the Arabic rulers, but that did not change the ethnic structure. During the 9th, 12th centuries, the ethnogenesis was established through the amalgamation of the local peoples, Persian, and the Turks. So this is the story. Therefore, Uzbek migration is rejected. Their historiography is on the settled civilizations of Transoxiana, whether it be in Turkic or Persian. And Islam Kerimov, well, you know it, of course, wrote in his book, Uzbekistan on the Threshold of the 21st Century. And
Şu 3-4 sayfaya daha bakayım geliyorum. Tamam. Anne şey sorsana bir iPhone 10.
Precisely on this land, reciprocal enrichment of world cultures, nomadic plus settled, Iranic plus Turkic, Muslim plus Jews, Muslims plus Jews, Christians, they all amalgamated, coexistent, and then amalgamated in this region. So we are, I mean, Uzbekistan is an ideal synthesis of both the nomadic civilization, like Kazakhs, for example, or the settled civilization. So if there will be a central country, I mean, most significant country in Central Asia, let's say, it should be Uzbekistan, because it is the combination of both the nomadic and settled civilization. And it is also the combination of all those religions and also of all those Persian and Turkic cultures. They all created high educational standards, urbanization, industrialization, etc. It can even become a mediator between West and East, because it is the melting point of the East and West. Also with the help of Silk Road, of course, but not only because of that. So it is and should be a regional power, therefore. In a book published in Uzbekistan, that claim about the migration was presented as the origin of the Uzbeks, but it by Ilhamov, but it was very clearly, strongly rejected by Kamaluddin, who was the head of the history, head of the Institute of History at the Academy of Sciences in Uzbekistan. And he published an article about that for the wider community in English. And he claimed that ethnogenesis begins, well, this is the argument he disapproves, he rejects. Ethnogenesis begins when nomadic Uzbeks migrated. No, he says. People who argue that try to depict Uzbeks and other Turkic-speaking peoples of Central Asia as uncultured nomads, herders, migrants, and conquerors. They did not contribute to the development of civilization. We are not nomadic, we are not barbarian, we are a settled civilization. And then modern Uzbeks, ethnic and historical ancestors, were ancient settled agriculturalists and urban Turks of the Central Asia, both Turkic and Iranian speaking tribes and peoples. Okay. When the coming of the Uzbeks did not contribute, only the ethnonym was taken after 1924, and that's it. Okay. Those are the basic ideas. And then the main focus is on Timur and Timurids. This is also interesting because Timur ruled 100 years before the Uzbeks came to Uzbekistan. But as I said, this is not a matter of significance. State of Uzbekistan is deeply rooted because at the time of Timur, he conquered large territories, many achievements in science and literature. It became a regional power and also a power recognized by the world. That means by the West, France and England. And yes, Venice as well, Venice, yes. And yes, those are, we can say that for Shah Ismail as well, that I told you the reason he is not considered as a main historical figure. So, and another significant issue about the consolidation, just like in Azerbaijan, fight against invaders, consolidation of the core, fight against Mongol invaders, and fight against the Arabs, etc. I skipped that part. Yes. I can also skip that. So here you see Emir Timur. And this is the history textbook of the 7th grade. 1/3 of it is devoted to Emir Timur and Timurids. This is a huge section, actually. It covers a period nearly 100 years, 800 or 900 years. That period of Timurids covers only 100 years, but still it is 1/3 of the whole book. This shows the significance of it, of course. Those are some pictures from Uzbekistan. That one is a museum, you know it probably. It is at the very center of the capital, Tashkent, at the main square. Temuri Museum of State Museum of Timurid History is written there. And on the other side, you see me, that small person is me, and big personality, Timur, of course. That one is from Samarkand. And then this is from the museum again, Emir Timur, state of Emir Timur, his conquests being glorified, of course. The one on the right side, Emir Timur, our pride. And this is again from Tashkent. That was in 2011 during the celebrations of the 20th anniversary of independence. And again, some more sculptures and pictures, etc. So I'm concluding. Each republic is trying to create its own version of the past. Yes, 1 hour. They are dealing with facts, but those facts are reinterpreted according to the requirements of the state in order to raise new generations with a national past. The national identity is expected to consolidate loyalty to the state, which is different than the neighboring country. Foundations of historical legacies are also different. Those are, of course, related with my hypothesis, and I tried to show them. Those post-Soviet republics started with territorial histories, relied on them for the consolidation of their territorial integrity. That was a necessity. And that territoriality is and was inclusive for all peoples until the establishment of the ethnogenesis of the titular nation. So it is important, it is inclusive, but after the ethnogenesis, the people who have migrated to that country are, of course, not part of the titular nation anymore. After consolidation, more extraterritoriality plus nationalism. And for extraterritoriality, we see in Azerbaijan that Iranian Azerbaijan is also part of history. In Uzbekistan, realm of Timur, for example, not only that. In Kazakhstan, as I said, is still strongly territorial, but we see some minor changes. Like, for example, there is a picture of Attila, the leader of the European Huns, and there it is also told as part of it. That will still change in a process of change, but not very extraterritorial for the time being. So nationalism, ethnic history. For Azerbaijan, nationalism is in the perenniality of the land for the Turks. For Kazakhstan, it is all peoples of Kazakhstan until ethnogenesis. For Uzbekistan, Persian plus Turkic civilizations and their glorious legacy in Transoxiana. That was it. So about 1 hour. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Emre Hocam, for the great presentation that eliminates not just one country, but the whole region, actually. And this comparison is also, I think, very valuable for us. We have, I mean, I can just ask our participants. So if you have questions, please send these questions first to chat section. So first of all, I can see how to give the word to ask a question. And the second time, in sometimes the question is repeating. That's why if it's repeating, at least we will know this at the beginning. First of all, while we are waiting for the rest of the questions, may I start the discussion? Because you actually pointed out very interesting topics and very interesting parts of this historiography of three countries. And you actually mentioned that historiography based on the territory was by somehow is taken from the Soviet type of historiography. So the first question will be how really the historiography of these independent states, how it's really independent and how much it's still Soviet. So does I mean, do these countries take and continue the Soviet historiography? Because I mean, I studied the historiography by somehow of Ukraine, and I saw that this struggle of trying to break the connections with the Soviet historiography and create a completely independent. So it will be my first question. And the second question is very connected to this. You mentioned that, for example, in Azerbaijan, it was, and I'm sorry, in Kazakhstan, it was about the Russian occupation, the period of Russian occupation. What about the Soviet period? I mean, how do they evaluate Soviet period? Is it occupation or not? Because this is a critical question for the whole post-Soviet countries, how to evaluate a Soviet period. And depends, I mean, I think it will be a really huge difference between Central Asian countries and, for example, Caucasus, because they, at least Azerbaijan, they had this pre-Soviet period of independence of Azerbaijanis People's Republic. So, I mean, how do they evaluate this? And I mean, what is golden age for them, for all these countries? I mean, you mentioned, how they took, and whether can we say that it's golden age for Soviet period is by somehow golden age for Central Asian countries, at least. I mean, I know that they try to go directly to Timur and even early, but I mean, it's not just one golden age, it can be two types. And the last question probably, I mean, they're all connected, that's why. I mean, who is the enemy? What kind of enemy is presented in this textbook? Because when we look to for example, I did very similar research for Ukrainian school textbook a few years ago, probably 6-7 years ago, and I definitely saw this Mongola-Tatari. Yes, so, I mean, the term that actually is not very correct according to the academic research. So they are presented as their main enemy, and this has very big consequences for the current political situation also. So what about these countries? So historiography, Soviet period, enemy, golden age.
Okay, thanks for the summarizing, because I had already forgotten what you have asked. Okay, Soviet. So continuity and change with the Soviet period. Well, in order to clarify that, we should first define, of course, what Soviet is. Territoriality, yes. If we take territoriality, yes, we can put a check mark on it. And if we take historical materialism, yes and no. It changes from country to country, and it still has some, in all of those three countries, we see still some marks of historical materialism. And I didn't talk about Turkmenistan. In Turkmenistan, it is different, but in those three countries, yes. What is it? Well, the stages, for example, about the discourse on feudalism, especially in Azerbaijan. I actually spoke about the tone of nationalism in Azerbaijan, but it is interesting that we also see some marks of historical materialism, especially when we are talking about feudalism in Azerbaijani history textbooks as well, also in others. And about the not very clear cut, not from slavery to feudalism and then to capitalism, not so much clear cut, but still you feel, you have that sense that it is related with previous historical materialist approach indeed. And for example, not only the feudalism, not only the shift from one to the other, but also within feudalism itself, you see many sentences about how economy determines, or about class struggle. Yes, I can mention it. Yes, about class struggle, you definitely see it. And then also another Soviet issue is about the resistance of popular fighters. For example, this one is history of Azerbaijan from the Soviet period. And you see here, yes, right. You see here Babek, a whole page nearly is devoted to Babek, who fought against the Arabic invaders. And also in recent books of Azerbaijan, you find pages devoted to Babek, fighting against the Arabic invaders. He is or was a fighter of the people against the invaders. So those are related with the Soviet period, but they still have their place in the historiography. So, well, we can add some more issues, but I will stop it about the continuity with the Soviet period. And the enemies you asked, briefly, enemies are all invaders, okay? Be it Muslim, be it Mongol, or whatever. Invaders are considered, I mean, people coming from the outside are considered as invaders. I mean, this is not peculiar. I mean, this is not specific to their history. This is a general notion of territorial historiography. I also studied Indian history, for example. For India, it is also, there are also some similarities. And what else? What was the third one?
The main, maybe the most interesting,
Golden
how do
Age.
they evaluate Soviet
the Golden
period?
Age. The Soviet period and the Golden Age also. Okay, the Russian occupation as well. They take it as negative. Russian occupation is taken as negative. So the tone might differ, but still it is negative. And the Soviet period, both, it is interesting. They embrace the achievements of the Soviet period, the industrialization period, for example, and the cultural achievements of the Soviet period, and the Republican parties, their achievements and their presidents, what they have accomplished, established, are generally positively evaluated. And yeah, Soviet period, the Golden Age changes. For Azerbaijan, it is today, I can say. There is not a historical Golden Age defined. It could have been, I was expecting it to be Shah Ismail, but it is not becoming a Golden Age, and it will not, I think. For Uzbekistan, it was Timur, of course. For Kazakhstan, also today, I can say, after Nazarbayev, I mean, but somehow Kazakh Khanate as well, Golden Ages. Was it all?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, really illuminating answers. Thank you. And Turgut Hocam, I guess you were the first who wrote questions. So please, the floor is yours to ask a question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Gürbüz. I really enjoyed your presentation about the textbooks in these three countries. Actually, I have my question is about the academic history writing in these countries, because as you may agree, there may be a great difference between the school textbooks, the history in the school textbooks, and the academic historical research. So in these countries in Central Asia today, what are the main topics, main questions with respect to history writing in the academic field? Thank you.
Yes, of course, that's a nice question. We discussed about that before, long before. What it is hard to tell about that, but what I can say, on the one hand, there is not much difference, but on the other hand, I also made those presentations, similar presentations to members of Academy of Sciences in Uzbekistan, from Azerbaijan, real academicians. They also found it interesting, those arguments, and they told me that they did not know that history textbooks were written like that. Academics are working on primary sources, and they are publishing actually good books on primary sources. That the other issue, what those educators are writing, is also relies on this primary sources, but they make their own selection, of course. There is on the one hand a commonality where there are some discussions being made about how to evaluate, for example, the Timurid period, or how to evaluate the Russian period, etc. Those are being discussed at the Academy of Sciences. And as a result of this discussions, they publish history books in volumes. And when the school textbooks are being written, they also use some information from them. So they are related, but I cannot say 100% related. The academics, I can just say that the academics are dealing with different issues. And some results can be found in those books, but there is not a total parallelity between them. So other issues, well, it is another long argument about what they are discussing in Academy of Sciences, what their results are. So about the ethnogenesis, for example, it is what academics are also talking about. But there are other issues which might be different. Okay, I can only give such a short answer in this issue.
Let me actually complement this question, kind of like I may have a response regarding Kazakhstan, if you're interested. And they're like kind of similar to Emre Hoca's views, I guess. And I can proceed with my own question, if it's okay, Yulia.
Actually, I was going to give the word to you, so you just realized this.
All give, I guess, right? Well, the thing is, like, regarding Kazakhstan, for example, the scholars, I had the honor to serve in like Kazakh national science, like Kazakh Tubitak, basically, Kazakhstan's, and I had the chance to act as a referee in evaluating proposals, and for a few years now, and especially in recent years, they're really strong proposals by historians, and these are really, you know, doing like in a true sense of science of history, like with the right method, and not always like politically oriented. Of course, they're supporting the main narrative, but I guess this is what the country needs to, as all other nations state, they need to find supportive stuff. So I guess that kind of I wanted to add, and perhaps may switch to my own question. And with regard to the Kazakhstan and territoriality, I think Emre also, I dared to write a piece on 550th celebration anniversary of the Kazakhstani state, and hopefully it's gonna be out next week in electronic and other forms. So in there, what I kind of like, I mean, I'm not a historian by training, but these are all interesting issues, and I think they, in Kazakhstan too, they try to find the roots or connect the people with the territory, like all other nation states, and of course the Kazakh as the titular nation have a priority in that sense. And there, I guess I kind of like try to connect this with the general theme of your presentation, Emre. I think this is all ongoing, right? As you said, the establishing the territory and people's connection in Central Asia, and perhaps as Yulia may contribute, in Ukraine and all other post-Soviet world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess that was and thanks for the presentation. It's really, really, I mean, you didn't only like talk about, you actually talked about, like, in the true sense, Europe and Asia, Eurasia, and I always thought like these are all related issues, and perhaps I'll talk to you later as this kind of related to my children's heritage as well. Like in the next presentation, maybe you'll also connect us to other continents too, like Americas, and like, okay, we have to invite you again, Emre. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question actually, also from the next question is also from Turgut Hocam. So if it's okay, I mean, because we are giving according to the chat, that's why I asked to send questions to chat. So Turgut Hocam, please, can you ask your second question?
Yeah, actually, my second question is rather about politics. You have studied the history writing historiographies of many countries, Turkey country, in a comparative perspective. And now actually in Turkey and
Turgut Hocam, we cannot hear you, unfortunately. Can you repeat your question?
After actually.
And also,
can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
You hear me. All right. Sorry. So my question is rather about politics. So you studied history writing in different Turkic countries. You made comparisons as you presented us today. And actually now in Turkey, we have this idea of the Turkic world, Türk dünyası. And this idea is voiced by certain scholars or political actors in Turkey for so many years. And there are some organizations, let's say pan-Turkic organizations like Ethnogenesis, Turkic Council, Türk Konseyi, so on and so forth. But after studying the historiographies in Turkic countries, what are your thoughts, ideas about this idea of Turkic world? I mean, is this just the idea, or does it have? Is it something real, or an achievable objective or just a fantasy? And what would you say about this idea of Turkish or Turkic world?
Yeah, I also worked in that Turkic Council. We had established a Turkic Universities Union, and I was the general secretary, general coordinator of it. Anyway, I am just yesterday, actually, I met their secretary. Anyway, we are talking about these issues as well. And well, all those countries in all spheres, be it history or media or in any field, actually, all those countries are new countries, newly independent countries. And as young nations, they are trying to become themselves. They are trying to create the self, first of all. So if those Turkic countries will, for example, cooperate in a certain issue, they will and they are having their own positions on the table. And the point is now to strengthen their position. This is related with history as well. A common history or a common identity is another issue. I have also conducted a project about common citizenship for those Turkic states, nation states. So we also made it in Europe, in a European country, whatever. We first looked at the European countries, how they are doing it. They are talking about the country itself and about the union and about the world. So if there will be something common, that like the Turkic word, for example, all those states or those nations have to have their own positions first, and their position have to be accepted by the others. And it will again be a table based on that process of conflict, compromise, and consensus. So all of them want to be recognized as an independent, as a sovereign state. And this is very understandable. So this is the situation right now. I mean, 30 years ago, for example, when there were also attempts about writing a common history textbook, which, well, somehow it has been realized, but not accepted by most countries because they find themselves to be underrepresented. So, but European countries are also doing it. I also studied a Polish-German history textbook, for example. They have different methodology, how to prepare a common history textbook. And in time, it is not the time for it probably, but in time, they will all have their own seats. They will talk and create consensus on certain issues. Only such a union can be established, I think. So this will be my short answer. And this is for other, not only history, I said for media as well, for example. In every field, there is that issue. Okay.
Thank you very much. And our next question was from Nurbolat Nishanbayev. So, Mr. Nishanbayev, you can ask a question.
Thank you so much, first of all, for the organizing this event. I'm from Kazakhstan, University. Professor Gürbüz, I was fascinated with your presentation. It was kind of eye-opening presentation for me. I'm also a PhD student. My question is about in Kazakhstan is reconstructing the history. As you have mentioned it, after the collapse of USSR, Kazakhstan also started reconstructing the national identity. But my point is here, during the Nazarbayev period was quite different comparing to the Tokayev's. For example, during the Nazarbayev period, most of the time historians in public at school books, they didn't touch on the Soviet history. Most of the time they talked about Dzungars, Kalmaks, back 17th century, 19th century. But in recent times, the head of the upper chamber of parliament, Mevlana Hashimbayev, he mentioned that in Kazakhstan, the famine during the Soviet periods, 1931-33, shouldn't be politicized. My question is my first question, to what extent reinterpreting or giving new grade for historical status on the famine during the Stalin period, to what extent impact to the modern Russian-Kazakhstan relationship in the framework of Eurasian Economic Union? Yeah, thank you.
Mhm. Well, thank you for the nice question. Well, and also so the historiography is also changing, you said. Thank you for that. Kazakhstan is not very far from me, but I couldn't get the new books because of the quarantine period from Kazakhstan. And the information I have about Kazakhstan are from those books. Those are generally from the time of Nazarbayev. So you warned me about going back to Kazakhstan and buy the new books, or if I can find the PDF of them, that will be better, of course. So I need to change that. And about the Soviet period, yes, Kazakhstan actually wants to separate itself from Russia. And also the Stalin period, the repression, collectivization process are very critical issues. They criticize, well, you know better than me, but what I see, I would say, they are criticizing those periods, but those periods somehow were also criticized, better to say, criticized in Russia as well. Putin has a different policy actually, but there was a gap of time when Russia was also criticizing those issues, and Kazakhstan also criticized. And Kazakhstan also opened a museum of repression in Chimkent. Where was it? So they can criticize these issues, but the issue for Kazakhstan is very sensitive because of the territorial problem. It has a very long, we all know, it has a very long border with Russia, and some people living in the north of Russia might shift to a separatist, secessionist understanding. Sometimes we see that this secessionist understanding is getting stronger, sometimes less. Economically, Kazakhstan is strong. Because of that, now it is in a better situation for Kazakhstan. But if Kazakhstan will make a strong step in criticizing Russia or Russian policies, first Putin, of course, or who the president will be, then the Russians, especially in the north of Kazakhstan, will criticize, especially Putin openly criticizes. So also Nazarbayev was actually looking for some gaps in order to emphasize this, here you are, in order to emphasize this Eurasianism at the center of with Kazakhstan at the center of it, or the Turkic heritage, which is accepted as Kazakhstan's legacy, or the Kipchak legacy. In 2005, for example, it was the Kipchak legacy, and they also find a center, research center for the Kipchak legacy for the Altın Ordu and also for the Mamluks in Egypt, etc. So they are also trying to create some extraterritorial historiographical understanding, historiography, better to say, which will also push Russia to the other side. But they are in a very sensitive position and they have to act with baby steps, let's say. That's what I see.
Thank you.
If I'm wrong, I might be wrong. You are in Kazakhstan, you know better than me. Okay.
Thank you very much. And the next question is actually from Alan De Jong, I guess about the history book. So please, Mr. De Jong.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting talk for me. I'm interested in some related themes. One of them is, in my work in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, I noticed that national histories are being taught compulsory subjects even in the university, and which is very different than in the United States, where you get a course maybe in the 9th grade and you're finished with that. So I'm curious to know how this national history and also citizenship training, where and for how long are these subjects required part of the curriculum in either secondary schools or in the university, particularly in Uzbekistan, because I'm trying to do some work there now.
Yes, okay, thank you very much for this question. Yes, that's true. They are must courses, and not only must courses, but also there are state exams at finishing, and also at the when students are finishing. Well, I'm working at a university in Kyrgyzstan, and at the university we are also given history of the fatherland. It's a must course again, and then there is a national exam about this issue, and only indifferent of the subject. I mean, indifferent of the department, be it history or I don't know, engineer, whatever. So all students, all university students have to pass that national exam on history. When did they start? I do not know the exact date. It was after the independence, of course. I first learned about it in 2001. So it started after the independence in 1990s. And I was also told at that period that before the Soviet period, there were those general national examinations on the subjects of philosophy and history of the party. But after the independence, they were replaced with history of the fatherland. So this will be my short answer. That also proves us how significant, important is that history education for the nation, national identity. In US, yes, also in Great Britain, after the 9th grade, I guess, it's a selective course. Their books are good in Great Britain, but it is a selective course and open for students who are interested in making research on history. And they do not cover all history. So you are right. And also in some other countries, history is getting less important. When I was in Sweden, for example, another example, and I was looking for a history atlas of Sweden because I wanted to see that Baltic Sea as the center of the world and the Vikings and the Russian Rus. But I couldn't find any. All the history atlases I found were either published by Oxford or Times whatsoever. I finally got one, which was originally published in 1960s. So their history of Sweden had also shifted towards a more European or global history. So this is the position of history in some countries, or specifically national history in some countries. Okay, thank you very much.
Exactly, and I guess it's the issue that is we can see in all post-Soviet countries, and maybe not only on post-Soviet countries, but also in all kind of nationalizing states. I mean, the states that has some issues or in the constructing their identity and the constructing their, of course, national history in that case. And I mean, I have just some thought about this, maybe because it was the same way in Soviet times here, when they had this history of Communist Party, and when the independence come out, they just changed the history of Communist Party with the national history. So it seems like at the beginning it was just the easy way how to deal with this syllabus, with switching syllabus, and then I don't know why they still use this the same. I mean, in Ukraine we also have the same stuff, like Ukrainian history compulsory in all university, and in Turkey actually also this Atatürk Club Tarihi, it's compulsory for the whole universities. So like similarities are here. Okay, so the next question is from Eltirishan Elcibey. So Mr. Elcibey, if you're here, you can ask your question.
I think he has microphone problems, he wrote, so maybe we can read it, Julia.
I have no idea. I will just check.
He says like,
Oh.
thank you, Emre Hocam, if it's possible, because he cannot use microphone right now due to technical
Okay,
problem.
yeah, microphone. Okay, exactly. So the question was, if it's possible, could you give brief information regarding Tajik historiography? Are there any common narrative with Uzbeks, or do they prefer strict isolation?
Yes. Yeah, of course, a good question. First of all, I don't know much about the history of Tajikistan. I have books of it, looked partly of it. What can I say about it? They have problem with the Uzbek history in Uzbekistan, of course. Some parts of Uzbekistan, especially Samarkand and Bukhara, are considered to be the historical realm, part of the historical realm of the Tajik historical legacy. And also there are some historical figures, especially poets, who were accepted as national figures by Uzbekistan, but also by Tajikistan. So the golden age, you had asked about the golden age. The Samani period was a golden age for Tajikistan, for example, but the center of Samanid state empire was in Uzbekistan, is in Uzbekistan or Bukhara. So there are conflicting issues between those two countries, and well, how will it be solved? That will remain probably for some time. As I said, I don't know much about Tajik history. I had some Tajik friends, and when I was making some presentations about historiography, some historians from Tajikistan also came and we talked about those different issues. But those are just those conflicting issues I know about Tajik history. I don't want to speculate about this issue.
We have a lot of good words that's probably our, not probably, but our listeners and participants say to you. So I will not read this. You can, I can share the chat section with you, so you will see who thanks you for the great presentation. And I also would like to also join these people and say a huge thank you for the great presentation and for the very important issues for the national identity that you're searching for. I guess we don't have any questions. Someone just asked about that you are teaching in Kyrgyzstan. Yes, we presented this in the flyer that Manas University, yeah, Turkish Manas University.
Yeah, correct.
Exactly. So, like, I guess if you don't have any questions, we can finish. And again, thank you very much. And I hope to see you in the next seminars. Oh, Işık Hoca also want to add.
I think Bahnur Otarbayeva has a question in teaching in Kyrgyzstan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, now I see. Yeah.
Sorry. Well.
So, Bahnur Hoca, can you?
Maybe she can ask herself, or
yeah, probably.
Yes. Hello.
Hi there.
Hello, everyone. I'm calling from Almaty and Kazakhstan, and thank you for the presentation. It was impressed. I'm just wondering, because you mentioned that you were working in Kyrgyzstan, and I'm wondering about how the Kyrgyz people and Kyrgyz textbooks just interpreted their Turkish legacy, Turkish history, and also most of all, which is I'm curious about this, how they interpreted Kazakh as a Turkish people. Because when I was in Isikul region, Isikul in Cholpan-Ata, there is the museum complex Ruh Ordo, very huge complex, you see, and there is the there is some monuments there about the Turkish roots and Turkish tribes and Turkish people who belong to the Turkish. And, you know, we were very excited to watch this monument, but unfortunately we couldn't find any Kazakh there. We couldn't find Kazakh people related to the Turkish people, you know, we didn't find Kazakh name there. Everywhere, everyone there, Kyrgyz, Uzbek, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Turks, etc., you know, just Kumans, everyone except Kazakh. So that's why I'm curious. You were teaching in Kyrgyz university. So how it's related? How they interpreted that? Who are Kazakh? Are they Turks people, or and why they excluded Kazakh from the Turkish history? This is my question. I just I'm curious about this for many years, but I didn't ask anyone. Couldn't ask anyone.
Yes. Thank you very much. That was interesting.
Yes.
And an interesting remark as well. I will also, when I go to Assoc, I will go to the Ruhorda and check it again. Wow.
I see.
Actually, it must have been a mistake. Basically,
no.
It is funny. I mean, but the Kyrgyz people, if we talk about the history textbooks, there is no emphasis on the Turkic identity. Their history textbooks are based on the Kyrgyz history, and it is both territorial, I mean Kyrgyzstan, and also ethnic history, starting with the Kyrgyz people, 3rd century BC, 202. So we are an old people, the Kyrgyz people, and we are talking about our nation, our history. This is the idea. So there is no clear presentation or use of the word Turk for the whole group, for Turkski, I mean.
Yes.
So in Kazakh, on the other hand, you can see that word Turk in Uzbekistan and in Azerbaijan, and also in Turkmenistan. And then the second part, the other issue, although it is not being used in history textbooks, when we are talking to our Kyrgyz people or Tugay, whatever, they say that we are all brothers, Turkic brothers. Okay. So in popular discourse, Turks are accepted as brothers. Kazakhs are also bir Tugan, are also accepted as brothers, even closer than Turks. Turks meaning here people like me from Turkey. Kazakhs are accepted as closer to the Kyrgyz. So why did they forget it? Well, a reason might be Kazakh were wrongly called as Kyrgyz during the Russian period.
Yes.
Maybe they thought that this Kyrgyz is both for the Kazakh and for the Kyrgyz. I don't know, but maybe that might be the reason of the mistake.
This is interesting, very interesting. Just a few remarks about that, what you mentioned before about the Kazakh textbooks for the school textbooks. You mentioned there is no information about the cities and towns in Kazakh textbooks, historical textbooks.
No, there are.
Yes, that I definitely could say that there is the chapters for the 7th grade pupils in the textbooks, History of Kazakhstan. The chapter, the big chapter about the city culture in Kazakhstan. This is the long one, the big one chapter, and there is the information, huge information about the more than 30 towns in the South Kazakhstan, in the Sirdarya River and Aris River near region, and also later on in the late Middle Ages. This is in the central Kazakhstan. in central Kazakhstan too, you know, in the late Middle Ages. There is a long, so many information about the town culture in the, and another, the question was asked about the academician and who is writing the textbooks. I definitely could say for everyone that these textbooks for the school children are written by the academician. And one of the textbooks for the 7th year, it was written by the historian who is doctor of the historical science and the director of the history Institute of the History. And many of these textbooks were written by the academician. So there is no so much difference between, you know, just for the universities or scientific, and many of them based on the resources. This is my just few remarks. Sorry if it just, I just.
No, thank you very much.
Yeah, this
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. The first one, yes, about the cities. Yes, I said it wrong. I see. It is very important, of course, for Kazakhstan that they had ancient cities. I had made an interview with Karl Baypakov in 2001.
Yes,
and he was very proud in showing me the historical cities of Kazakhstan, and that they were established long before the Russians had their cities.
Yes, Middle Ages. Cities.
Yes, on Sirdarya. And also the second issue, yes, it is the same. I didn't want to say it clearly, but yes, be it Azerbaijan or Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan or other countries, there is not a big difference between the academics and the history textbooks. So the main arguments are being written in history textbooks, just the tone changes.
Yes, right.
You are right. Thank you for
okay.
Thank you very much. I guess we are about to finish. So for the last word, I would like Ishik Hoca to say the finalizing word for this conference.
We're about to end this, as I guess we all need to be somewhere at as of in a few minutes. I guess we have one last question, but perhaps you can ask this directly to Emre Hoca later, Adelia Kadirshayeva. I kind of like to end with Gulzar Karubekova's comment. Kyrgyz people are the oldest Turkic people. That's why professor works at Kyrgyzstan. Emre Hocam, would you like to comment on that? Maybe we should all say like, we're all somehow related in Eurasia. And so thanks for being here. I can't thank Emre Hoca enough for this wonderful presentation, and for all those of you staying with us, and Yulia Hoca and Turgut Hoca, as we're the team organizing this, and would like to host Emre Hoca again and again, maybe. Thanks.
Okay, I also thank you very much for this nice opportunity and for the nice questions as well. Okay, hope to see you again.
Bye, see you.
I'm closing the session. See you.